Welcome back to the Normal Sports Show. My name's Kyle Porter. Today we're sponsored by Turtlebox speakers, Turtlebox audio. Jason Page, how much do you love your Turtlebox?
On a scale of what? Like 0 to 11?
One to Scotty Scheffler.
I feel like that question could fill up an entire pod, so I will just say Scotty Scheffler.
Scotty Scheffler, brand ambassador. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of brands, Josh Carpenter, Sports Business Journal. Josh, we don't get to talk super often, but I always enjoy chatting with you when we're on the road and just catching up and talking about the business of golf and basically everything in golf except for the birdies and bogeys in the golf itself. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here. I've been covering the business of golf for right at about 3 years. So I picked a good time to jump in to cover the business of golf, safe to say.
I actually don't know the origin story of, we've got a bunch of things to talk about, but I don't know the origin story of how you jumped over into golf. Maybe you told me, but I don't. If you could just let everybody else know, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I've been at SBJ now for 13 years or over 13. I'm in my 14th year here, and have done a lot here on the edit side, project management side, website maintenance, all that stuff. A few years ago, our golf reporter left. And I'd always been a golf junkie, had been involved in the sports business. And I kind of raised my hand and just said, hey, like, I'll do this on an interim basis until you guys find someone to do it full time. And, the snowball started rolling a little bit. And eventually it just got to a point where I was able to cover enough that they said, hey, you're doing a pretty good job at this. Why don't you just keep doing it? And so I think, my prior decade of experience here really kind of like at SBJ, like, yes, we have certain beats, but we're kind of required to be experts on sports business across all sports. Like coming in here, like they trained me to be an expert on the Olympics and the NBA and the NHL and MLB and like every sport all the way down to like beach volleyball. And so I think that kind of equipped me to be ready to cover golf because there are so many kind of intricate angles in golf. Like to me, like almost everything in golf can be a business story outside of literally like who wins the tournament. But even that, to me can turn into a business story because if Scotty Scheffler wins the tournament, well, I don't care that he won by 3 strokes on Sunday, but maybe I do because the fact that Scotty Scheffler had a big lead and won by 3 on Sunday, that's going to affect the ratings, that come out on Tuesday. And maybe those ratings aren't as high as if, the final score was closer. So to me, really almost everything is a business story. Now, do I sit there? Am I going to write game recaps and, round recaps on Scheffler made 8 birdies this round? No, I'm not. But to me, it kind of does all tie into the business of golf.
So you just mentioned the Olympics there, or maybe you didn't. Maybe I just have it on my mind. I think you said the Olympics. When you watch the Olympics or an NBA game or whatever, are you watching from the angle of sports business? Because sometimes like I'll do this with other sport. Like when I watch the Olympics, I'm thinking about normal sports. Like you get into this like, I don't want to call it a rut, but you get into your angle of like, this is what I do. And do you find yourself thinking about those things as you're watching other sports?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it adds a whole nother layer of what to watch. And as someone who's been a longtime sports fan and like you, working at a sports publication, sometimes you do get a little bit jaded just like watching the games. And as you get a little bit older and you have kids and things, it's like watching a sporting event it has less importance now at 36 than it did when I was 25, But you do, and certainly I look out for things, which brands are activating. TGL is an example, like the competitive side of TGL, like isn't as interesting to me as like, with where their season is on the schedule, it's very early in the year. A lot of these players are playing for the first time. You see some of these new brands popping up on players at TGL. That's like one of the interesting things about, what I do. A month ago, 6 weeks ago, I noticed there was an AT&T LED banner in the SoFi Dome at a TGL match. And that's a partner that had not been announced. Well, what happens this morning? TGL announces a founding sponsorship with AT&T, 6 weeks. So it's kind of fun for me to just sit there and watch and pick out the different brands. And, Colin Morikawa added KPMG to his left sleeve. How much is that deal worth for Colin Morikawa versus, I don't know, Brian Harmon or Nico Echeverria, you know, so it's kind of fun to do those sorts of things. And it's just, it just adds another layer of interest to me around a sporting event rather than just watching for who wins or loses.
Totally. Well, I found, and you're maybe the same, but I found the older I get, when I was 15, I could care less about like who Colin Morikawa had on his left sleeve, right? And I just wanted to know who won the Masters and who won the U.S. Open. And as I get older, I become more interested in, not as interested in the business side as the you know, the humanity side or the winning, whatever, but definitely more so. Like I listen to Acquired and I listen, you know, you start to get into like, wait, how do these companies operate? What is the, like, why does a business sponsor a PGA Tour event? Like, how does that even work? Is there an ROI there? And maybe part of that for me is just starting my own business and trying to figure that part of it out and seeing how these bigger businesses do it as well. But have you found yourself as you get older, you almost gravitate more toward the business side than the sports side?
Totally. I mean, it's interesting to me because, I guess one thing to kind of level set with SPJ is like, we're a trade publication. And so I'm in the business of like, I love to break news. Like everyone loves to break news who's in the news business. Like you want to do that, but also for a trade publication, like a B2B trade publication, my job is to write stories about a lot of these sponsors, other deals, business deals that are happening in sports. So our subscribers are largely like Joe Fan on the street is not subscribing to Sports Business Journal. It's largely executives at sports leagues, at teams, at tours, and that, you know, people of that nature that are reading us. So like, I want to write about a player sponsorship that Ludwig Oberg signed for his left sleeve last month with this Swedish-based AI platform. It's like, all right,
Normal
like,
sport.
right. So like, and like they signed that deal because the founder, the like 25-year-old founder of that platform he's a Swedish guy. And he like has become friendly with Ludwig. Anyway, like my job is to write about that, to find out how much they're paying for that deal. So then another player agent can go when they're negotiating a deal and could say, well, you know, this company paid this amount to be on Ludwig's left sleeve. We also have a top 10 player. You know, you should pay this brand that we're negotiating with should pay that. And so the news side of it, you know, I love doing that, but I also have to write these kind of B2B stories where people can read us and learn and find out more. So that's where it's like, I'm watching this to educate myself, you know, watching out for those business angles so I can educate myself, so it can inform my reporting. And honestly, I have a ton of conversations with a lot of these, you know, people from the brand side who run these businesses, but also from the agency side, people who are negotiating some of these deals for their players. Like they're curious to know too about how much these deals are going for, like what X player is doing and that sort of thing. So it adds a whole nother layer. Like,
totally. Do you ever feel like you're like almost like just a trader of information back and forth between, like almost like a platform for information? I mean, that's a dumb thing. We all have platforms to put information on, but you're almost like a broker.
A little bit, yeah. And that's a huge part of source building. Like, is you're like trading information like through your stories, but you're also going to, you know, me writing about a Ludwig Oberg, you know, sleeve sponsorship. His agent's not going to tell me how much they paid for that, but I can go to 6 other agents who also represent top players and say, hey, you know, what do you think a deal like this is going for a top 10 player who's like with Oberg, like he's got a perfect swing, you know, he's extremely well spoken. He contends at big tournaments. Like, so yes, information, like kind of bartering and trading and that sort of thing. It's definitely part of the job.
Yeah. I see you as kind of like a translator for a lot of us who see a lot of these sponsorships as very obscure things. I see it as sort of like we're living in Wayne's world where he's just like covered in sponsors and he's talking about like the ridiculousness of sponsorship, but or like super goop that you just tweeted out. I feel like that sometimes feels very, very surreal. Like what kind of world, what a world. But you add like extra context to it, or you sort of translate like why is this interesting or relevant from a business perspective, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, you have to provide that context, or people are going to be like, well, why is Supergoop, you know, signing on with the PGA Tour? I don't know if they even had an official like Sun, sunscreen partner before that deal. But it's always fun to dig in and see, on these. I know we've talked. Kyle, you mentioned the Nico Salt deal. It's like, and quite frankly, I've been trying to get someone on the phone to talk about Nico's Salt deal for about a month. And I think before this episode posts, I think I'm actually gonna make that happen. So I can write about like, why is Morton Salt, which to this point, their only other sports sponsorship is with the Kansas City Chiefs. And now they're sponsoring Nico Echeverria. And then he wins, and he's like sprinkling salt in the fairway at Pebble Beach. Like it's just super normal sports stuff. So.
It's for sure. It's very strange. I think, and I think one of the things I was going to ask you is like, what do you consider it your job to be covering? And you've basically already answered that. So I guess from there, just double clicking on what you were just talking about with the sponsorship, I think I know the answer to this because I've touched different people about it and like been in this world for a while. But I think a lot of people don't really understand why companies sponsor players at all, right? Like, why does, Ford put their logo on Phil Mickelson's hat, whatever. Like, there's a million examples that you could give. And I think the natural reaction is like, well, they just want their brand to be on TV because Phil Mickelson's on TV a lot because he's in contention. And I think that's like certainly part of it. But could you give a little more context to why a company would, like, maybe a couple of the reasons that a company would even sponsor somebody to begin with?
Yeah, I guess different companies have different, reasons that they want to sponsor things. And so I guess you could talk about it from a player level. You could also talk about it from an event level, right? Like one of the biggest stories that I've been covering since I came on the beat 3 years ago is like the cost of sponsorships, title sponsorships on tour. So like the brand equity, like on television, is part of it. But there's also from the perspective of a lot of these companies are multi-billion dollar companies. And so paying a couple $1 million a year for a sleeve sponsorship or something like that it's kind of like couch change for a lot of these. But what that does is it allows the CEO to get one-on-one time with one of these top players, to play in a pro-am at an event, to like, it's super, like golf is maybe the most kind of B2B sport where like you do a sponsorship deal and you're going to get so much access from, time with that player. A lot of these CEOs, like they love golf and they want to be able to tell their buddies like, hey, I played 18 with Webb Simpson the other day, or I played 18 with Scotty, and that's like, a lot of it's kind of at the core of that. Like some of these like, pro-am parties where they get to select, the sponsor gets to, decide who's playing with who. Like that's all part of it. It's kind of crazy to see from a title sponsor standpoint. I mean, like the Miami tournament that Cadillac signed for, like, I don't know what they ended up signing for, but the tour was in the market for that tournament for $30 million for 1 year, like year to year, $30 million. I forget what they signed. They probably signed like a 5 or 6 year deal. So look at, $30 million across 5 or 6 years. That's what Cadillac's putting into that golf tournament. I always compare it to like Caesars, I think is paying, I think it's less than $10 million a year to sponsor, to put their name on the Superdome in New Orleans. So you look at the Superdome, they're paying, and again, I might be off on this, it's like less than $15 million. I can guarantee you that. To sponsor the Superdome, which has Super Bowls, it has concerts, it has Final Fours, it has, 10 NFL games a year. That name is affixed to the top of the building. Airplanes flying over and you're seeing the Caesars logo. Truist here in Charlotte is paying $27 million a year to sponsor the Truist Championship. That brand is going to get visibility for 1 week, one tournament week at least. Now, we know that they get more brand visibility throughout the year with the way the PGA Tour's kind of TV ads are structured and all that. Certainly, it's more than just a 1 week deal, but that has still kind of blown my mind in covering some of these title sponsor deals. The full field events are like between like $15 and $18 million a year for those sponsors. Signature events are like, Wells Fargo here in Charlotte tried to, offered like $22 million a year to sponsor that tournament. And the tour basically was like, well, we think we can get more. And so Wells Fargo dropped the deal. And then Truist came in, a local company, and paid $27 million a year to sponsor that tournament. So, but a lot of that is like that access throughout the year, that sort of thing. So that's really where the value is, I think.
I think if you're just a regular golf fan, you might look at that and say like, oh, that seems like you're not getting enough ROI on your name being on the tournament or whatever. But the real ROI to me, and I didn't learn this until I was several years into this job, which is maybe a shortcoming of my own curiosity. But if you're the CEO of Truist and you've got a 9-figure deal hanging out there that you're like, we need to close this deal. What's a way I could do it? Oh, I can invite the CEO of that company to come play golf with me and Scotty Scheffler in the Pro-Am at the Truist Championship in May. Right. And so then all of a sudden your ROI is like incredible. Now, I don't think that every company is necessarily using that sort of sponsorship for those purposes, but that's the part that I didn't totally understand, I think, until I was kind of several years into this.
It's, you're going to play with Scotty Scheffler, and then, you're going to sit by the 18th green in an air-conditioned venue, and you're going to eat, USDA Prime, you're going to eat lobster, you're going to be able to see what's happening in front of you. You're also going to have televisions around you. Like, it's all that rolled up into one. And like, let's use Truist again as an example. In Charlotte here, we have Wells Fargo, we have Bank of America. Truist was kind of the little brother almost. Well, now they can come in and put their stamp on, we're sponsoring one of the 8 or 10 biggest PGA Tour events of the year. This is our city now. So they can kind of do that. You're going to have that purple branding all over the city. So there's a ton that goes into it for sure.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Jason, did you have any other questions about sponsorship, or, I mean, we can get more into it later if you want to.
I mean, I'm a little bit curious about some of the more like obscure sponsorships, but I think we can get into that. Like, not the big dogs, but like the little fish. But
like for players or for events?
No, like we just talked about Supergoop as like the sun care sponsor of the PGA Tour. Like how far do we go with sponsorships? Are we getting the tea sponsors or?
Explain this to me, Josh, because I think I understand sort of how this works, but you know it in more detail, which is that when a company signs up to be the PDF provider for the PGA or whatever, like there's a million of them, right? My understanding is that they're paying to get that like sort of partnership, but some of the money also goes to like they have to end up like directing some of that money toward the players also. Is that the way it works? Like
I'm not sure 100%. I think that's right, but yeah, they and then in return they get obviously the notation as the what's the is it decorators? It's like the one that would sponsor the weather delays for the tour. Like you'd see for on a 4-hour weather delay, now you're sponsored by, I think it's decorators, but it's like stuff like that, so they obviously, you get their name as an official marketing partner of the tour, but then they get all those other assets, whether it's social activations or videos or that sort of thing throughout the years.
So we started sponsoring Shane Ryan's rigmarole videos. Just he's psychotic, and it's going to take him we're speaking of ROI is just going to be off the charts because he's going to do it for like 20 years. But if we wanted, let's say we went to a Nico Echeverria level of player and said, we want to sponsor their ball marker or their towel or just something obscure like that. How much would that cost us a year?
It really depends on the player. It depends on the agent that they have. It depends on the brand that you have. I mean, you could, some of these like left sleeve sponsorships, which for like Oberg, like as an example, like the kind of consensus I got back for that, like Swedish AI company on his left sleeve was like, most people were like, that's at least between $1 million and $2 million a year for that deal.
Really?
Because he's like, again, like this guy is going to be on major stages, late in the game on Sunday. He plays TGL. I think I brought this up a couple times. Like TGL, Shipley as an example, had this deal with Zyrtec, and Shipley has been like crap this year, has played terribly. But then the guy goes on TGL and he makes a hole-in-one, and he's on ESPN for 2 hours in prime time.
Yeah.
And that Zyrtec logo on his hat is everywhere. It's like, I didn't even know he was sponsored by Zyrtec because he's been missing cuts and he's not been on television at all. But so those are all factors. But like the Nico, Morton Salt deal is going to be far different than the Ludwig sleeve deal, just because they're two set. Nothing against Nico, who's a 3-time winner. He might have more PGA Tour wins than Ludwig does, right?
Yeah.
At this, he's got 3, I think. But kind of from a marketability standpoint, different kind of classes of players. And again, it goes down to who your agent is too, and how they go about negotiating deals. So Echeverria, that Morton deal could be $200,000 a year. I don't know. It could be as low as that. It could be as high as, $500,000 a year. I'm kind of speculating on that. So
it's so interesting because it's like, okay, again, talking about ROI, and like, you don't do everything for like in a spreadsheet, right? You do some of it for kind of an incalculable brand awareness type thing, which is, all business and all marketing or whatever. But is Zyrtec, like, do they need their logo out there? Like, or do they need players to appear at events that they're hosting? Like, is that more the reason that they're doing stuff
that's
like
part
that?
of that's part of it. They can get out there and they can activate, Zyrtec, for example, like they're sponsoring Shipley and they're sponsoring Akshay on top of their PGA Tour level deal. So like, I don't know why Akshay's always just like struck me as a guy who would have really bad allergy problems. And so like, so like those are two like very like, Shipley's kind of seen as this rising star, as is Akshay, right? He's like 22 years old. Like, so they can get those 2 brand deals, and they're activating at, early, kind of springtime events. They've got some on-site activations at, I think at the API this week. They've got some at the RBC Heritage. They've got some at the Truist. And then they kind of take the summer off, and then they've got some like at the Tour Championship as you kind of head into fall allergy season. So like, does Zyrtec need, brand visibility? No, like everyone knows what Zyrtec is, but it just gives them another layer of visibility. And then it probably gives them, some of that access that maybe some of their C-suite would like from a golf perspective. They had not done anything in golf. I think they did like one little golf video last year about like heading into allergy season. And then the tour reached out to them and they were like, oh, well, we need an official allergy sponsor. Like, let's talk about
of
this.
Course.
And so and here we are, and so here we are, and they have that deal. So, no, on the surface, you see a lot of these brand deals, and you're like, AT&T doesn't need any more visibility with TGL. Like, why are they doing that deal? But it's like, again, there are so many layers, and all the companies are different. That's why, like the Nico Salt deal is so interesting that I'm like dying to figure out like why did you sign this deal?
Totally, 100%. And the AT&T deal, who knows? Like, they might be paying to get access to the SoFi Center for 3 days in December to have like a little convention yeah. And that's like, there are a million reasons, I think, and a lot of the more interesting ones are beneath the surface with a lot of this stuff, whether it's with tournaments or with the players themselves. What brands do you think do that? I'm asking exactly 0 of the questions that I wrote down, but you just got me going on this. What brands do you think do the best job of getting the right guys? Just do the best job of marketing within golf. You think of the obvious, like your Rolexes and your, different companies like that. But who do you think does the best job, or maybe the most underrated job?
Boy, that's hard. That's a hard question. You obviously do see a lot of the Rolex, like look at the guys that like Rolex has, and any of these like top tier watch companies. You've got Rolex as, they've got Scheffler, they've got Rahm, they've got Oberg. They've got, Tiger. Omega has, Rory. Wyndham Clark is another Omega guy. Like, so, they try and, I think the watch companies are easy to say. They do a nice job of signing kind of like very clean cut. Like their players really make sense. KPMG, I think, does do a pretty nice job with their sponsorships. And it's not just like men's golf and sponsoring, players and events. It's like, look at what KPMG does across the women's game. Look how they've invested in the KPMG Women's PGA Championship beyond just like title sponsoring that event. But like ever since they signed that deal, I think it was back in 2014, maybe, like look at some of the, and I know like they played at Frisco last year, and say what you will about Frisco, but like getting the Women's PGA Championship at some of these kind of iconic courses that the men have played at to increase the visibility around the women's game. Baltusrol. I mean, they played at Sahali a couple years ago. I forget where they're at this year. But, I think they played at Congressional maybe. So like doing that, raising the purse sizes for that tournament, a lot of that is KPMG doing that. So a lot of it is that too. You look at, I just did a story last month on kind of sustainability in golf. Like partners that are coming in, like sustainability has kind of struggled in golf. Like it's kind of a, people don't like to talk about sustainability in golf. So it's like these corporate partners coming in around the tour championship and like kind of championing sustainability and becoming more green, and WM and what we've seen them do out there in Phoenix. It's about it. Those are the types of things that I look for in terms of what brands are doing well across golf. So I don't know if that answered your question. It is tough to say like who does a really good job, but like I think you look at some of the events on tour that kind of pop. It's funny, like the Travelers Championship, like those guys, that event always pops, even being the week after the US Open.
Yeah.
And their team, I probably see out at events more than any other like kind of sponsor / tournament director. Like Andy Bissett from Travelers, you see him at every tournament and he's flagging down, even being a signature event sponsor, and they're flagging down Scotty Scheffler across the parking lot. Like, Scotty, can't wait to see. Like, they just do a fantastic job, like, at that event. And there are several others like that, but that's just one example.
The women's PGA is at Hazeltine this year. And then the Rolex guys, Ludwig, Matt Fitzpatrick, Ricky, Brooke Henderson, Lydia Ko, Bernard Longer, Hideki, Colin Morikawa, Scotty Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Tom Watson, Rose Zhang. Pretty good.
Pretty good list there.
Not to mention Tiger and, John Rahm. Okay. I want to talk about the schedule a little bit, because I know you've been reporting on this and talking to people about it and thinking about it. You were on Five Clubs with Gary Williams talking about some schedule stuff recently, which was very good. It seems to me, Josh, and by the time this comes out, we're going to be in Players Championship week, and this is going to be a big talking point. Whether a ton of stuff gets announced or not remains to be seen, but it's definitely going to be something that gets talked about. It seems to me like this is the biggest scheduling inflection point in a really, really long time in terms of like the tour might look vastly different in 2027 than it does in 2026. Do you agree with that?
I'll say it could look vastly different in 2028.
Okay.
I think it could be phased. Like one thing I've kind of been hearing is that things are moving maybe a little bit slower than they had initially hoped. And a lot, again, like going kind of back to the business of golf, is like a lot of that could be due to all these title sponsors that are tied up for multiple years. Like, you don't sign a title sponsor. There are some exceptions where sponsors would sign 1-year deals, but in a lot of cases, these deals are 5 and 6 years at a time. And they're kind of staggered to where, like, yes, you have like 4 or 5 deals that are expiring this year, but then you have other deals that are through 2028, 2029. Look at Cognizant, for example. Like that deal's through 2030. There's a lot of talk about like what happens to the Cognizant Classic. Well, Cognizant, now they were a PGA Tour partner. They were a President's Cup sponsor before they moved over to sponsor this event. So like they were kind of with the tour already, but they signed up for one thing a few years ago, and now you're maybe getting something totally different. Like, now that we're where we are. So how does that, you pull that thread and what does that unwind? But yeah, I think you could see something totally different in 28. Tiger said that at the Genesis a few weeks ago. He said like, hey, this could be staggered over a couple year period. But yeah, you have to, I think, and they have to change something. Like you can't have it the way it's currently structured. You can't have a Cognizant that's getting pinched like it is in that spot at Jack Nicklaus's. Like, I know he's got the memorial, but that event is his other event, right? You can't have that happening with the way the field played. I know they ended up having a pretty good finish, but you can't have the field put the way it is. And especially for the tour, that being one of its owned and operated events. Like the tour owns and operates 9 or 10 events a year, and that's one of them. They can't love that event was at, in the state that it was. And so kind of, to the point of, well, are they going to, there's been a lot of talk of cutting a ton of events and all this. Well, they're going to go to a 22 event schedule. I don't know that they're just going to go to a 22 event schedule and cut, like, what do they play? I think they have like 46 official events or something from January to, like, they're not just going to lop off 25 events.
Yeah.
I think what you could see happen is maybe they've got 8 or 9 signature events now.
Mm-hmm.
You just the tour's already bifurcated, so you just increase the number of signature events, and you just have like different tours. Eamon Lynch wrote about this last week, I think. Like, it's what I've kind of been hearing. Like, and one of the reasons being for that is you have some of the, like, look at the full field events that just extended their sponsorship deals through 2030 last spring. We're talking about 3M, Valspar, John Deere, Zurich, all full field events that some people would probably say, well, those aren't in big markets. They probably don't draw huge television viewership. That makes sense to get to move on from that event. But to me, they don't sign 5-year renewals last year, and then the tour's just going to turn around and just cut them the next year, and they're just gone. Like, I just don't see that happening.
Well, and your bigger problem becomes just filling TV time, right? Like, that's where, I can't remember the exact number. I think it's around $900 million a year that the PGA Tour receives from CBS, NBC, ESPN.
I think $7 billion was the total for the contract was $7 billion when they signed the.
Was it 10 years?
It started in 2022. They announced them in 2020. The deals kicked in 2022, and they run through 2030. So $7 billion over 8 or 9 years, and yeah, you're right at kind of that $900 million.
So $800 or $900 million, and you start cutting. Even if you don't, even if like you and I or Joe golf fan doesn't think that the 3M hours are valuable, and I don't really, like, you can't just like take them away and for CBS still, like, they're going to be like, well, we're not going to pay you for something that we agreed to at the beginning. So to me, that's, I wonder if it has to be like a 3-year phase in, or you just end those contracts early and revamp them.
Well, that's kind of the, yes, the schedule moving around, but like the TV contract is maybe the kind of biggest underlying story in what happens with this. It might be one of the main reasons that the tour brought in Brian Rolap, who ran the NFL's media business for, years, to make this happen, because it's like, yeah, these deals aren't expiring until 2030. Yeah, you're going to give the TV partners a totally different product in 2027 and 2028. Like, you have to figure out a way to renegotiate those deals.
Yeah,
and then you have Rollout coming from the NFL. Kind of the next domino to fall with relation to the TV is like the NFL has an opt out in their deals, and they may renegotiate those early. So now it's like, does Rollout try and get in, and basically once the NFL renegotiates those deals, it's going to have a domino effect on the rest of live sports. And so it's like, does Rollup kind of jump in and try and renegotiate these golf deals before the NFL renegotiates their deals to kind of, maybe you can get a cheaper is the wrong word, but maybe a discounted price than what you would get after the NFL kind of comes in and sucks up a lot of this inventory.
The thing that doesn't give me a lot of confidence is that the thing that Rollup was known for at the NFL was sort of spreading the inventory across as many platforms as possible, right? They got Amazon involved, they got Netflix involved in the Christmas games, all this stuff. And it's like, what have we been complaining about for the last 5 years? It's like, golf is spread over, like, I don't know, it's on here for 2 hours and then it's over here. And I'm curious to see if do they go even further with that? Do they get a Apple TV involved like F1 did and like the MLS has done? Do they get a Netflix involved? That would make a lot of sense with the the full swing stuff. I am very, very curious, and I think that's you said this, like, that's the sleeping giant in terms of everything in professional golf right now. Is what does the PGA Tour do with its upcoming TV deal, which is 4 years away, but might only be like a year or two away.
That's zero time. Yeah. 4 years away is zero time, and kind of the TV rights.
And I think that will determine a lot, for better or worse, that's going to determine a lot of the future of the PGA Tour. It seems like.
No, it totally is. I wouldn't discount like what Amazon did. I know a lot of people, like, Amazon signed that deal for the Masters, right? And they're going to get 2 hours of coverage on Thursday and Friday. I wouldn't discount Amazon signing, like, to me, that's a big deal. Even though it's just 2 hours on Thursday and Friday at Augusta from like 1 to 3, I think, or the hours, like, that's a big deal. And I wouldn't discount them getting in the mix. I know, like, Netflix, you mentioned Netflix earlier, they were kind of in the mix for the USGA rights before they eventually went to Versant, USA Sports, and NBC. I think that what'll be interesting, like, I don't think it would be wise, and this is just my perspective. The PGA Tour, the leverage that they've kind of had against Live over the last 3 years is their kind of mainstay position on broadcast television on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if the PGA Tour's kind of core viewer is kind of that older white male, if they want to watch golf on Saturday or Sunday, what do? They turn on CBS at 3:00. And if it's not on CBS, what do? They know what channel NBC is, and they go to NBC. And so, like, that to me is extremely valuable. I think it would be, like, kind of in the tour's best interest to kind of try and keep that. And then maybe it's the Thursday and Friday broadcast windows. Maybe it's the kind of, you have the lead-in coverage on Golf Channel on Saturday and Sunday into the main windows on broadcast. Maybe that's where they go outside the box and get some of these streaming partners involved. I mean, the one thing that once you go to a streaming partner, yes, you might attract some younger eyeballs, new demographics, which is what the tour wants. But at the same time, your viewership is going to go down.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the push and pull. Like, maybe you get a bigger rights fee from an Amazon than you would from Golf Channel, but your viewership's going to probably go down.
I think, two things. One, I was trying to imagine my dad trying to find the golf on Apple TV behind a paywall, like the MLS was. And I'm like, that's a disaster. Like, that's never going to happen. And two, Josh, I think we've entered this interesting era, and this I've seen this in digital media, like the worlds that we're in, where everything's more fragmented. And so you're not going to get somebody that works for the Times, works for the New York Times, and it will become increasingly rare for somebody to go to the New York Times and make $600,000 a year to be a report, to do their job, right? Because everything is more fragmented. Maybe the Times is a bad example because they seem to be kind of the outlier there. But all these places the internet has democratized everything, flattened everything. And so there's only so much attention, and it goes to more places now, which means less money per place, which is fine because you have little 2-person outlets like normal sport, and we don't need a ton of money, right, to exist. But it seems like these leagues are trying to fragment and also make the money go up, which to me seems like a really, really difficult proposition. And I just don't know how long that can go on into the future.
NASCAR is a great kind of example of, like, if you go back a decade ago, every NASCAR Cup Series race was basically on Fox or NBC every Sunday afternoon. So they redid their media deals, a few years ago, and they got a bigger rights fee, but now their season is very fragmented. They've got races on cable. They've got races on FS1. Like, the number of, like, NASCAR races on broadcast television now is far lower than it used to be. And because of that, their numbers aren't as high as they used to be. So it's like that push and pull is like, do we want a higher rights fee and lower viewership, or do we want to keep that kind of, like, listen, like, I know the PGA Tour numbers have been down some. Last year was a really good year, but a couple years ago they were down. Like, and you might, on the surface, you might say, well, 3 million average viewers on a Sunday isn't that many, because everyone thinks about, like, oh, the NFL is drawing $35 million viewers for a regional window on a Sunday afternoon. But, like, they're the outlier. College football is the outlier. 3 million viewers for a golf telecast on a random Sunday, among other sports telecasts, it's pretty good. And so I think, and that's where, like, the PGA Tour, maybe more than any other sport, or golf more than any other sport, has such, like, kind of loyal fans in terms of they know where they're going to see their golf. And so if you start fragmenting that, and you sprinkle in an Amazon and a Netflix, I don't know, like, maybe from the tour standpoint, it's like everyone has Amazon or everyone has Netflix. In my example, we don't have Amazon. We had too many boxes showing up at our doorstep, recently for my wife. And we're like, oh, like, is this really worth it? We're just ordering stuff to order. We canceled Amazon. And now I'm, like, in this conundrum of, Well, now the Masters has or Amazon has Masters coverage, and now there's a new Rory documentary that's going to air on Amazon on March 30th around the Masters. And like, I can't watch that currently, so it's like we got to go back. So it's like this whole push and pull of I don't know if fragmentation would be a good thing for golf, but I guess we'll find out.
It's super interesting. I think the flip side of that is I was reading about this and I included it in the newsletter recently, but in the world of AI, maybe sports just become increasingly valuable because it's like the one thing that people can trust is like a real thing, you know? Like that's an interesting concept. And so maybe even though it gets more fragmented, maybe the value still continues to increase. Why were ratings up in 2025? I didn't, because and I'd love for you to explain this, but the data is being measured differently in 2026. But as far as I understood, for most of 2025, it was being measured consistently compared to 2024, 2023.
They were. I mean, one reason that ratings were. So I always like to kind of break out. There are television ratings, and then there's television viewership. By and large, an overnight rating for a sports broadcast is not reported anymore. So I always like to say television viewership. Anyway, viewership was up in 2025. In large part because the numbers in 2024 were so bad. So like, and I was saying that throughout 2024, it's like, look, like the numbers are really bad this year. 2024 was kind of an outlier. They're going to normalize in 2025. Yeah. And so you did have that happen. There were a lot of other factors that made the numbers so much higher last year. I mean, you had big time winners kind of at big courses. Like Rory won at Pebble Beach last year. He obviously won the Masters. That like kind of juiced interest in the sport really like through the first half of the year. You didn't have Scotty, but you had all these other like kind of big, and I forget some of the other, winners throughout the early part of last year, but you had really good.
Rory won the Players
at iconic venues. Like those were the things like for the PGA Tour that really matter, star players. Like the best thing for the tour would be if Spieth could kind of like find his form and be in the mix a lot. Because as much as people they're like, oh, Spieth is the guy is a television juggernaut. Yeah. Like if he's anywhere, if he's within 5 shots of the lead, the TV numbers are going to be huge. Yeah. So that was one reason. And yeah, it was just I think it was a really good year for pro golf. I think people maybe were kind of like also last year were moving past a lot of the LIV versus PGA Tour, things had kind of subsided a little bit. People were just back to just watching golf and not, because the kind of constant, dialogue was gone of like, oh, this fight between the two tours. It just kind of got back to golf. And so I think that was one reason for the increases last year.
Thanks again to Turtlebox for sponsoring today's episode. Jason, the other day we were in the backyard. My kids, it was post-Olympics. And my kids were wanting to conduct a ice dancing competition on the trampoline.
Obviously.
Which was incredible. They made up categories. It was like aura and tricks and music and costumes. So naturally, we needed music, and we threw the turtle box, the fighting lady yellow turtle box, the Ranger that we have. We just used the magnet, put it on the trampoline, and they had music going so they could hear it while they were dancing. So the judges, my wife and I, could hear it out in the audience, and it was fantastic. Like, I love that you can take it anywhere. We still use it at baseball practice. You can magnet it to anything, and it's just a great device that we use constantly, and can't get enough of it. Do you think that LIV is still a threat for the PGA Tour or to the PGA Tour? Does the PGA Tour still view LIV as like this sort of threat to their business model?
I don't think so. And I also think like, I don't necessarily think, and I was writing about this at kind of toward the end of last year, like there was this kind of fight between the two, but like as we got toward the end of last year, each tour was kind of content to just go their own way. Like someone at the tour told me that like basically they viewed LIV as kind of a pebble in their shoe compared to 3 years ago when like LIV was this existential like threat to the PGA Tour. Like the PGA Tour was in like serious trouble. And LIV by contrast, like Liv is just worried about like playing a global schedule and about doing their own thing. And like I've told this to people, like I've been to several Live events and I've kind of seen the growth from like the first Live event I went to in 2023 to the most recent one I went to last August. Like they are drawing good crowds to their events. It's a party at their events. You know, does the golf feel secondary at times? Yes. But I mean, these are not things that are, to me, are just going to go away overnight. Like they have, you know, I went into kind of the TV compound area last year in Chicago, and there were like 200 people just working on the television broadcast. Like this is it's a big deal. Like it's not like something that they're just going to pull the plug on overnight. I don't think, at least. And so like that's been the main kind of theme to me, is that like PGA Tour is going to do their thing and Liv's going to do their thing. It has been interesting to me. Like that was the kind of thought amongst the golf industry last year. And then Liv has gotten this a new CMO to start this year, and they've kind of been poking a little bit of fun at the tour and kind of jumping in the conversation and taking jabs here and there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they feel they're doing that because they feel like, well, you know, the tour came in and they kind of poached Koepka back and they poached Reed, and so maybe there's a little bit of a back and forth. It's been kind of fun to follow this year, but I do think the tours are kind of just doing their own thing right now and not necessarily worried nearly as much about each other as they were a few years ago.
Yeah, I agree. And this struck me recently, I think, with some of the Bryson contract negotiation chatter. And, you know, people are like, oh, well, if Bryson leaves, it's over. And I was like, I don't think Liv like cares about, I mean, obviously they want to have Bryson. You'd rather have Bryson than not have Bryson. But I think they just want to be the world tour, like the preeminent world tour. And so I think that I just don't agree with any position necessarily that's like, well, if they lose X, then it's over. Or even if they lose Bryson and Rahm, then it's no. I think they just keep going. Now, I am curious, and this is a question I had written down. Which league do you think lasts longer, Liv or TGL?
That's a really hard one. Like and people were asking me that like 3 years ago, whenever TGL first like kind of started talking. They're like, and they really came about kind of at the same time. I mean, that's really hard. So which league is around what, in 5 years? Is that what, or you're saying which league is around longer?
20 years from now, which one exists, or both of them?
Boy, that's hard. Let's go 10 years. Let's go 5 years from right now. I think they're both still going.
Okay.
I don't know if they are in the current form that they are. Like, does Liv look totally different? Does TGL look? I think TGL creating a women's league is a huge miss. I think it's a huge miss. I think they need to get the women integrated into the men's league. Yes. And I think they should have waited to nail down the men's league, like get that product right, and then you integrate women. Like I don't really doubt them or question their move to not integrate women into these men's teams, which they're just in their second year. So like you're going to say, we're going to launch this product last year and now we're barely a year into it and we're going to blow it up and we're going to start adding women. So like, I don't really disagree with not doing that right now, but I think they should have nailed the men's product first. And then you add the women in, because like, I think what's going to happen with the women is like, you have your kind of core LPGA fans, viewers, who are going to watch women's TGL. But are your Joe PGA Tour fans who watch PGA Tour golf every week, are they going to tune in and watch WTGL? I find that kind of unlikely. But I think if you had the best women's players playing alongside the men, then your Joe PGA Tour fan would say, look at these great women's players, these great personalities that they have. I need to go watch the LPGA.
Totally.
That's why I think that would have been in their best interest.
The best example of this is the mixed doubles event at the US Open, at the tennis US Open, right? Like they added it. I don't know all the details, but they added it over the last 2 years. They expanded it last year and it's a thing now. And I mean, just speaking as like somebody who's gotten more into tennis over the last few years, it's got like stuff like that has gotten me more into the women's side, following the women's side. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you. You kind of avoided the question.
Oh, which one? Oh, which one lasts longer?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. I'm gonna say I'm gonna say. God, I don't know.
Well, it's weird, right? Because
I truly don't know because there's
Liv has the funding, and TGL seems to have more of the juice in terms of like star power, like a lot of powerful people involved, a lot of companies on board that are partnered with, like AT&T being on board and Steve Cohen and being involved and Rory and all this stuff. And Liv doesn't have that, but they also have like a ton of money, but that also can be turned off at any time. It's really difficult.
I mean, I wish I could give you a guess, and I'm not like just trying to dip the question, but for all the reasons you just said, like, I think one question about TGL is like, you mentioned star power. Like, do the stars continue playing in that?
Mm-hmm.
Like Rory's been playing basically every match. And Rory has kind of talked about, and I know it's his, he's a co-founder of that league, but he has been very vocal the last year about like, kind of like wanting to play like meaningful major championship golf, like Ryder Cups. Like that's what he's in it for. So like, is Rory McIlroy going to be playing TGL in 5 years?
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's my kind of thing is like, that I don't know that they've nailed from a player standpoint is like, you're just like kind of bringing players in, rotating, like Chris Gotterup's playing for Atlanta, and it worked out because Gotterup's played so well this year, but it's like you just have kind of like sometimes random guys almost just showing up playing that you didn't even know like were part of the league. Like Ben Griffin is like an alternate with New York, and they're out, like their season's done, but he never actually played. So like I think they have to nail the player part of it before I can really wager a guess on like which is,
An easier question: which do you want to exist? No, I think it's an interesting question to ask. Like, in what form are they going to evolve to? Because I think like the scales at which they're both operating now, maybe that's not sustainable for 10 years. But kind of like offshoots of TGL, where it becomes like a smaller sim golf league that many people can participate in. That's also a very interesting sort of like evolution, which we can't really predict at the moment, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I have a lot of friends who aren't like, PGA Tour watchers week to week, but they play a lot of simulator golf, and they're like texting me on a Tuesday night about TGL when I'm not even watching it. I try to tune in when I can, but like if there's a night when like I'm, if I miss a TGL match, like I'm not losing sleep over. Like the match, like we're talking on Wednesday here, and Tom Kim made a hole-in-one.
Yeah.
On Tuesday night. That match started at 9:00. As a mid-30s person with a toddler, like that's too late for me. So I wake up at 2 a.m. and see my group text blowing up about Tom Kim just made a hole-in-one. Like, so I think they do have that.
And also, can't they just program hole-in-ones? I mean, it's all,
here we go.
I don't know. That's the tinfoil hat theory is like, you've got, Tiger's team is on the verge of elimination. And all we've been hearing for weeks is Tiger going to play TGL? And, Tiger's team is on the verge of elimination, and then they make a hole-in-one on a simulator. And now all of a sudden, Tiger has 2 more weeks to rest before his next TGL match against Rory and Boston Common in the first round of the playoffs. And maybe this is the first time we see Tiger playing golf in like, 3 years at this point?
You can't do that. Because if it ever...
No, I don't think you can, but I have had some people reach out to me. They're like, oh, like, who pressed the button?
For sure. So I worked for TGL last year. I'm not contracted with them this year, not being paid by them. I have not watched, obviously, as much as I did last year because I was covering it, but I haven't watched very much at all. But when I have watched, it's been fun.
It's entertaining.
I think it's weird because it's like kind of hung between two worlds. Like it's stuck between release patterns, so to speak. Because I can't tell if it's supposed to be like super competitive and serious or like YouTube golfy and fun. And maybe you can be both. I just don't know. I don't know if they know yet which one it's supposed to be.
It's almost like, I'm not a big NBA guy, but right now the NBA feels like kind of like the regular season doesn't matter. And then you get to the playoffs and it does matter and they get into it. And you've kind of seen that a little bit with TGL. Like the early season matches are kind of like Kisner shanking a ball off the flagstick and, Tiger hitting accidentally. Yeah, what was the shot last year where he was trying to hit a 200-yard shot and hit it 89 yards or something like that?
Yeah,
like,
he thought it was...
You've got kind of those fun moments, but then you've got Billy Horschel holding a long putt in the championship match last year and running around and and Patrick Cantlay of all people, like seemingly like actually into it. And then last night you've got Tom Kim making a hole in one and Tiger.
I mean, it was cool. It was like legitimately
you got Tiger
cool.
celebrating like he's just won a major championship. Like,
yeah. And so I don't.
That's a good way to put it, that it's kind of stuck between release patterns, because I truly don't know what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, but I don't no. Yeah, and to your point, like my kids were up late last night. We're in a different time zone than you, but they watched the Tom Kim hole in one, and then they went to bed, and it was like, oh, this was kind of cool.
Going to be their lasting golf memory of their entire lives.
I hope not. I hope they remember other stuff other than Tom Kim. Okay, couple more questions here. And you don't necessarily need to rank all 7 of these, but I'm curious about your rankings of who you trust in terms of executive decision making going into the future. And the entities I have down are PGA Tour, PGA of America, USGA, R&A, European Tour, Augusta National, and Live Golf. I'd love for you to rank those. Just give me your top 3 of like, hey, I really trust the direction, the leadership here, the executives, the decisions they're making. And I'm just curious about, because you know that world probably a little bit better than I do. And I'm curious about your thoughts there.
I would probably lead with Augusta, just because they have so much. I mean, they truly are the like kind of power broker in men's golf. Like Ridley's been around for forever. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a decision that he's made since he became chairman. I think he became chairman in 2017, maybe. You'd be hard pressed to me to find a decision that he's made or that the club has made under his direction that people were like really questioning what happened there, you know? And so again, and Augusta just holds all the cards with respect to the men's pro game, and really maybe not, I shouldn't say the women's game, but they have, like, with what they've done with the ANWA and what they've done around drive, chip, and putt, like, I think they're kind of an easy number 1. Number 2, I would probably go with the tour, only because I think the people that they've brought in to this new structure, like Roll-Up is like, you don't become the number 2 at the NFL without being an extremely savvy business person, shrewd business decision maker. Like, you look at what the NFL has become, and he's behind a lot of that. I know Goodell's been in the commissioner seat for 20 years now, but Roll-Up's been right there for many of those years. And so I think it's a mix of what they have with Roll-Up, with their new kind of commercial guy, Dhruv Prasad, that they brought in to run their commercial arm from a private equity standpoint. Like, and I think they still have a mix of golf people. You know, so like Prasad and Roll-Up aren't golf people. Like, we all know that. But they still have that mix of other golf people.
Yeah,
in there. I think that's one thing with Liv that I've struggled with, is like Liv doesn't have a ton of golf people anymore from an executive standpoint. Like Scott O'Neill is very new to golf. A lot of their C-suite is very new to golf. Now, the guy that runs their events, Ross Hallett, ran events for IMG Golf for a long time. Super smart, super impressive. Like, he's Liv's golf guy. But outside of him, they don't have a ton of golf people making decisions. So that's been the one thing that kind of, I think, has hurt Liv from that standpoint. So I've got Augusta, I've got the tour. You'd probably have to go with, I think, the USGA after that. I mean, Mike Wan has been around the block for a really long time. Again, he's a kind of a shrewd decision maker. He's very open. He's very transparent. I don't write a ton about the golf ball rollback, but they've been kind of leading that effort, I believe. And again, like, I think what Juan did for the LPGA and his time there, I know some people have questions about the media deals that he has them in, and kind of the situation the LPGA is in now, where they're kind of in a rebuild mode. But I think Juan, Fred Perpall, I know he's left now as the organization's president. Super impressive, really set them up for success. And I know Kevin Hammer's coming in now. And I'd probably go with the USGA number 3. On down from that, I mean, you could kind of go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm interested by the PGA of America.
Yeah, that's one that I just kind of, Terry Clark's coming in. I think Derek Sprague was not a great fit there.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to see kind of the path they've gone. You know, they had Pete Bavacqua was a golf guy, but he was also extremely seasoned business guy. You had Seth Waugh, who is like a business guy, but he's also a golf guy. And then you bring in Derek Sprague, who's not as much of a, you know, they wanted kind of a club pro in there to run the organization. And now you kind of go back to Terry Clark, who is kind of like Seth Waugh from a sense of super businessy, but he's also been involved in golf and knows kind of the ins and outs of things. So I haven't got time with Terry yet. I don't know a ton about him, but I had them kind of lower on my ranking just for that, you know, because of that, because I think, you know, his official start date was just this week. And so we've really got to kind of see, I do think the PGA has a ton of kind of potential for what they can become between the events they have, you know, the Ryder Cup, the facility, say what you will about the golf course in Frisco. I know some people don't like that, but the facility they have down there, you guys are down there.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Super incredible, impressive. And so I do think there's a lot of upside with the PGA of America. And the PGA of America, like their kind of bread and butter is grassroots game, like the recreational side of the game. And the recreational side of golf is in the best spot that it's ever been in, really. Like more people are playing golf now than ever. And so I think there's a huge opportunity there.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I hope that it sometimes feels like they're trying to do too many different things. And I get that from the Club Pro standpoint. They've got this group of 30,000 people that they have to care for, but they also have the PGA Championship, the Women's PGA, the Ryder Cup. There's just a lot going on there. And I think they need it seems like some like sort of uniform, some direction and some good leadership that it seems like, what's the last, Terry Clark, can provide. So we'll see. Okay, we got a couple of questions on Twitter. I put this out there. People wrote back. These can be very quick. How much money is Augusta National leaving on the table each year during the Masters Week, between broadcast, no online merch, free parking, and stuff like that?
They're leaving a ton. Kind of the company line in Augusta. If you ever ask them a numbers related question, like how many tickets did you sell, or how many, their response is always just the right amount.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they're leaving hundreds of millions of dollars on the. I mean, you just look at COVID. When they did the online merchandise sales, like, how much merchandise I ordered from my buddies because I, had won the lottery and had access to that. And I was like, oh, like my buddy doesn't have access, but I do. So let me get you what you want. Like they could sell so much more. They could raise concession prices by $1 for every sandwich. I think they're $1.50 now. They could go up to $2.50, and they would make so much more money. But honestly, that's just not that important to them. Like they just want to remain understated. Like they can kind of be the biggest golf tournament in the world without them broadcasting that hey, we're the biggest golf tournament in the world.
I think they do a very good job too of I heard somebody talking recently about this idea of stored up energy, where you don't have to what you produce doesn't have to be like everything you've got every single year. Like we made every cent we could possibly make. You can store up some of that energy to release at a later time if you need it, And I think they, more than any other event or any other organization, do the best job of kind of maintaining that stored up energy for the long term of like, hey, we could raise these prices and it wouldn't affect anything. And if we need the money, we can do it. Or if we need to strategically make this decision, we could do it. But we're not going to do that in the short term because we don't want to mess anything up. They're unbelievable at that.
I would argue that maybe, last year's Masters is maybe the sporting event of the year in the United States in 2025. But the only number I have to back that up would be that their viewership was at a 7-year high. I don't have how many tickets they sold or how much money they made off concessions or any other data around the tournament. It said it was just a friggin' great tournament. And it always is. And just when you have a finish like that, it just kind of props it up. So
totally. Okay. What else we got here? How much do ratings really matter? I mean, it depends on, I guess, who you're talking about. It
depends on who you're talking about. I mean, live sports are still extremely valuable. And when you talk to advertisers, that ratings matter a lot. Viewership matters a lot. and Brian Roloff is a viewership guy, and that's his thing. So they matter a lot.
Let's see here. If all majors were played in the SoFi Dome, would Tom Kim pass Jack before he turns 27? Probably
So.
Sponsorship details. What costs more, a hat or a sleeve?
Again, that just goes back to the player. Probably in most cases a hat, just because that's what you see. Like, it's funny, you go back to the pre-Tiger days and there were a ton of guys not wearing hats on the golf course. And now, like, people saw the brand equity that you could have in wearing a hat. And I think Ollie Schneider-Jans and Robert Rock are like kind of the two of the only ones that I know of now that don't wear hats on the golf course.
Maybe they're sponsored by Supergoop.
Yeah. So I think I would have to say a hat at this stage.
Kyle and I talk a lot about Tyrrell Hatton and Siwoo Kim as well. Like the amount of sponsor logos above the nipple. I don't know if there's like a stat for that, but is there like untapped markets for where people can play or where sponsors can place their logos?
It kind of depends on your apparel. If you've noticed, like Rory is a Nike guy. Like Nike basically has brand exclusivity on their players. And so if you look at Rory or Scotty, like the Nike logo is the only one on there. I think with Adidas, they can have one other logo. That's like Ludwig. That's why that Legora sponsorship for Ludwig was so valuable, because that's the only branding that can go on his sleeve outside of Adidas. So it really depends. You see some guys that are just, there was a video of Sepp Straka at some tournament last year, and he was at his pre-tournament press conference, and he was just sitting there and clearly had been coached. Like his arms were like out like this, so you could see both sleeves, both collars, both sides of his chest. Like they're really coached up on these things.
They always seem to place their watch hand in quite a prominent place, or they should wear two watches, honestly.
For sure,
like
that's
Kevin
all
O'Leary.
part of it. That's all part of it.
Do you I know you did some on the Fried Egg I think you did it on the Fried Egg around the Ryder Cup or US Open last year, but do you do a lot of reporting around the business behind other like media businesses?
Yeah, in some cases. And that's again, that's one of those kind of B2B stories where I'm telling the business of the Fried Egg. Like,
yeah,
it started out as, Andy and Brendan and just kind of the shotgun start, and Andy doing some of his architecture podcasts. And now you look to where they are with the sponsors that they have, and do they have an agency that helps them out? Like, so yeah, I find here and there, not as many, but here and there certainly do stories like that. I
mean, that story helped us out because we're like, okay, we don't know how this stuff works.
And that's where leading up to doing that story, before we kind of talked about doing that story, I did get questions from people in the industry, and they were like, hey, how do those guys make money? And they weren't like questioning their business, but it was just more curious. And so again, from that B2B trade publication, like me doing that story on them, I'm sure other publications, organizations like Normal Sport read that and said, all right, well, we need to do this or that to mimic that, or not do this or that, so.
Yeah, totally. Okay, last one. What's your hottest golf take right now that you also kind of actually believe?
Working in golf, we're in this golf bubble, and it's much smaller than we actually think it is. Maybe I don't know, is that a hot take? Like, I sometimes, I just feel like I'm in this vacuum and everyone is talking about golf, and then I go and have lunch with my extended family on Sunday afternoons, and I try and bring something up about Scotty Scheffler or something, and they just have no idea what I'm even talking about. They just have no idea what, they're like, oh, our LIV and the PG, or our LIV and the PGA and the PGA still going to merge. It's like, no, everyone's known that for a year and a half at this point. So
yeah, no, it's a good take. I think that
I have to check myself sometime on that.
Well, I think there's also a difference between, I have a lot of friends that are like deep in like reading, listening to Shotgun Start or whatever. But I also have a lot of friends that are just watching the Masters and maybe the US Open and the Ryder Cup. Right. And so even to them, I mentioned like, oh, Nico Echeverria's, sleep. And they're like, who, what, And so I think there's a difference in like golf is already small, right? You got like Rory's Masters win last year. I think the number was like 19 million.
18. It peaked maybe at 19 or 20 million, I think.
Okay, and then the hockey gold medal game at like 8 a.m. was like way past that, and you're like, okay, golf. That was like the biggest thing in golf that's happened in the last, other than Tigers win in 2019, in the last 20 years, and it got trounced by a hockey game.
The Masters was 2 spots ahead of the National Dog Show on the viewership chart for last year.
That's exactly. I mean, that's exactly the point.
Why sometimes I kind of have like, well, I got to check myself. Like, this isn't as big of a deal as we're making it out.
And I can't imagine working in like I don't listen to a ton of football stuff, but I listen to the Ringer fantasy football podcast, and those guys are good. I think they're really solid and they know what they're talking about, but their listenership is enormous because the total addressable market is 50x what golf's is.
And that's not me knocking this sport. Like, I love this sport more than, I pinch myself every day that I get to wake up and work in golf. So that I'm not knocking the sport at all. I love it more than anything. But I do have to really check myself sometime and say, like, yeah, the Masters was the biggest sporting event, the biggest golf event in years, and it was 2 spots ahead of the National Dog Show from a viewership standpoint.
That's a great stat. I did not realize
I would love to hear some of the title sponsors of the dog show. That would be amazing.
It's got to be a big one, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, that's all I got. Jason, you got anything else?
No, this is a blast. I feel like I learned a lot, and I was a little bit worried coming in, like you're going to drop a lot of acronyms and business terms that I have no idea about. But this is a blast.
Yeah, it was. Josh, thanks for coming on, and we appreciate your time and educating us, and hope to do it again.
Big fan of you guys. Always appreciate you having me, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.